On this episode of The Prediction Trade, we cover 3 different ways to make money on Monday's Canadian election. Tasha Kheiriddin returns from the Great White North to share her forecasts for Justin Trudeau, his party, and his opponents.
All you false pretenders and your freaky contenders trying to be the first. In my own opinion, you are not defending. You are the worst.
Welcome back to the prediction trade. If you can trade it or bet on it, you can bet we're going to talk about it. I'm Jeff Joseph, the editorial director of Luckbox magazine, and I'm joined by Mike Reddy, an editor at Luckbox and the producer of the prediction trade. Hi, Mike. How are you?
Jeff, I am doing well, especially since our last episode when we were talking about Kalshi. I don't know if you've been actively involved with those markets, but a lot has changed and a lot has happened since the last time we talked about it.
I have been in fact, I just placed a bet on Kalshi a moment ago as to whether or not it will rain in New York today. So I bet yes that it will. Let's see what happens. But yeah, a lot has happened. Of course, we had the two founders, Tarek and Luana, on the last episode of the Prediction Trade. They're the founders of Kalshi, and they shared with us what it took to get this exchange up and running and talked about where they plan to take it going forward. And we've been watching very, very closely and actively engaged. We noticed that their volume's picking up. Mike, what can you tell us about the volume in general?
Right. Well, there are currently 3 markets on Kalshi now with over 100,000 shares traded in them, which is certainly no small feat for a brand new prediction market that really just started getting their name out there. Those markets, if you haven't seen them already, Jeff, are: will 2021 be the hottest year on record? I believe Tarek spoke to that market in our episode with him. But also, will there be a day with at least 200,000 new COVID-19 cases before October 5th? And will over 225 million Americans be vaccinated for COVID-19 by November 1st? So, a lot of interest and emphasis on the COVID markets among the market participants there.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of good diversity. Remember, Kalshi is literally translated as everything, and we are seeing pretty much everything being traded. We saw record streaming on new releases like Kanye's new album and Drake's new album. We've seen TSA screenings. We've seen weather markets on whether it will actually rain on a given day in a city like Chicago, New York, or what the high temperature might be. So we've seen a lot of interesting new markets. Currently, there's about 62 open markets. When we spoke last time, they had 40 markets. So they're expanding inventory, adding new markets. I think about 8 markets are flagged as being new markets just today alone. And I see they are likely bringing in some new traders from the outside because they're getting some outside press. Rolling Stone a couple days ago had an article about one of their markets, about Governor's Ball, the popular outdoor festival that is scheduled to be coming up in New York. And the question is whether or not any day of the festival might be canceled or delayed. And that market is up and running and getting some good traction as well. So we're going to be watching Kalshi really closely. That's what we do on the prediction trade. We cover the prediction markets, and Kalshi's the newest entrant in town and giving us a little bit more diversity beyond the political trading that we do over at Predict It. So we welcome them, and it's great to have them on and look forward to having the founders back on again in the future. But Mike, we turn our attention back to politics today because I'm glad we have a returning guest with Tasha. She was dead on accurate for us as in her first appearance in calling whether or not there would be a Canadian election. She called that one right, and we'll talk about that. But talking about the election coming up Monday, and that's what today's episode's about. It's reminding me of what we saw last week with the Newsome recall election in California. A couple days in front of that election, Newsome was trading at about 90 cents as a probability of prevailing in the recall. And as we know, of course, he did. And that's the number that Trudeau's at right now. He's pretty close to 90 cents as well. So there's a little similarity. Of course, Newsome ended up winning by about 2.4 million votes, a practical landslide with about 2/3 of the vote in California. Not necessarily a surprising outcome, but the prediction market had it right at 90 cents. That's the same way they're handicapping Trudeau's outcome right now. And that's why we're going to ask Tasha what the probability is that he will prevail. So we'll be doing that in a moment.
Well, it's as they say, Jeff. The election seasons are the bread and butter of prediction markets, especially political prediction markets. So it's time for some Canadian bread.
All right. I'm not sure I know what Canadian bread is either. Before we bring on Tasha, if you're not already trading on Predictit, we do have a $20 offer for you. Just go to predictit.org/promo/TPT20. Sign up, deposit $20. We'll match that first 20 you deposited. That's predictit.org/promo/TPT20. Deposit $20. You have 40 to start trading with. Mike, please introduce today's guest.
Returning to the show today is Toronto-based public affairs consultant, political commentator, writer, and speaker, Tasha Kheiriddin. Tasha is a lecturer at the Max Bell School of Public Policy at McGill University, a principal with Canada's leading public strategy and communications firm, Navigator Limited, and is a political columnist for the National Post. She last joined us in April to forecast that Canada would hold national parliamentary elections in 2021.
That was a good call. I remember it well. Tasha, welcome back.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Good. I remember when we asked you for your call on the question, will Canada hold national parliamentary elections in 2021? You said,
well, my call is, I would say 100% we'll have an election this year. That's a very bold prediction, I'm sure, but it's 100% that it'll be this year. To me, the question is, when will it be this year?
And it looks like we have that answer. The answer
we
to
do.
when is Monday.
Monday.
So that was a good market call. It was your first time walking into the predicted markets, and at that time the price was 48 cents for the yes vote. So that was a 100% return for those who took advantage of that call. So seeing as how you nailed that last one, we thought we'd get you back in advance of Monday's election and pick up with two new markets that are sitting on Predictit. Actually, three. There's two related to the House of Commons, and then one, of course, to the outcome of the actual election for Prime Minister. So that's what we're going to walk through. We'll cover the latest in the race for Prime Minister soon, but let's first talk to the House of Commons. Parliament was dissolved, but before it was dissolved, the party breakdown looked like this. It was out of 338 total seats, the Liberals had 155 and the Conservatives had 119. There are two markets on Predictit related to forecasting the seats in Canada's House of Commons, one for the Liberals, one for the Conservatives. Before we get into that, let me ask you the key question. Why did Trudeau call for new elections now, 2 years ahead of schedule?
Well, the real reason is because he thought he could get a majority. That is the real reason. He will tell you it's because Parliament wasn't working. He needed some more wiggle room, essentially more power to run, do the recovery or run the recovery the way he thought it had to be run. The truth is, Parliament was passing pretty much every single measure that the Liberals wanted because nobody wanted an election during a pandemic. And the irony is that the decision to have a election has become the ballot question. Everyone's saying the same thing. Why are we here? We're in the middle of a fourth wave. One of our provinces just yesterday declared a state of emergency. This is haunting Mr. Trudeau. I mean, I thought he was going to go for it, but in hindsight, it looks like it was not the best decision for him to have made.
And of course, we're going to get to that big market at the end of this, but let's talk about the House of Commons right now. The markets on Predictit allow for 10 brackets. They're called bracketed markets. Essentially, how many seats will the Liberals win in Canada's next election? 149 or fewer is bracket number one. And then there's five seats apart, brackets all the way up to 190 or more. Eric Grenier, the poll tracker at the CBC, if I pronounce his name right.
Grenier, but close.
Grenier, of course. He's projected 151 seats for the Liberals. That would be the second bracket, 150 to 154. That bracket's only selling for 14 cents, which implies about a seven times return, 700% return of 14 cents paying $1. So what say you? What's your call? Where do you think we land here?
Well, my call, and in fact, is interesting. Our firm, Navigator, you mentioned at the top, we have been doing extensive election research all through the campaign. And one of the things we also research is predicting seats. And we have our own method of doing that as well. So our election forecast right now is at 148 seats for the Liberals, plus or minus 7. So when you look at this, it could go either way. There's always a ceiling and there's always a low bar. So 148 is kind of where we're looking at. But that would bring it actually to the top market that you have, which is 149 or fewer, but maybe in the 150 to 154. So the short answer is it could be just on that fringe. So if people want to take a chance on the 150, you might be able to make some money there. We'll see. Things could still move between now and Monday. The Liberals have been trending up in terms of the votes in the last week. The polls have tightened considerably. So we could still have some surprises by come Monday.
Well, let's go back over the math of that. The first three brackets then, bracket number 149 or fewer, sells at 32 cents. The second bracket, 150 to 154, is 14. If you were to add the three, saying you're 148 plus or minus 7, 148, that'd take you up to 155. That bracket, 155 to 159, is 13 cents. Add those three together, that's 60 cents to pay $1. Still a great return. So owning those three brackets would maximize probability of that outcome based on your own research. So it looks like your research and Grenay are pretty close together seat-wise, and looks like a good opportunity for traders. So we'll look at brackets number 1, 2, and 3, and how many seats will the Liberals win in Canada's next election. And I think your call is somewhere around 150, right?
Correct, just under 150.
It's interesting that you mentioned that in recent days, things have been trending back in Trudeau's direction. A couple months ago, this seemed to be not even close at all, but recent polling suggests a closer race. It's funny looking as an outsider at the political transformation that O'Toole's gone through. Now, even a physical transformation, I believe he lost about 40 pounds, right?
He did. He's posing in a tight black T-shirt on the cover of his party's platform. No one would have predicted that 2 years ago.
They might not have predicted also that he's gone from a kind of a negative campaign mode of take back Canada to something a little bit more positive, like we have a plan. He has also reversed his prior position on abortion, LGBTQ rights, gun rights. It looks like this is a calculated political transformation to appeal to the middle, kind of picking up on the David Cameron strategy. Is that what's going on?
I think so. I think that definitely the Conservatives realize they need to broaden their tent. They also are facing a challenge on the right side of their tent, though, from something called the People's Party of Canada, which harkens a lot to similar, I guess, policies that Trump voters could identify with: anti-vaccination, anti-government control, anti-liberal in terms of culture wars, a whole panoply of stuff. And because of COVID, this has really been sort of circulating around the, vaccination is the government's attempt to control your life, vaccine passports. And as a result, the PPC has gained considerably in polls. Some of them have them as high as 8% nationally, 7% in Ontario, where I'm sitting, where a lot of the really important seats that are in play are consequential. So that has pushed O'Toole a bit more to the left, because he realizes those folks are not necessarily going to vote for him. So he needs to broaden his tent in another direction. And that is the center veering a bit towards liberal territory. Like you mentioned, things in gun laws and other things that would appeal to urban voters who otherwise might have chosen to vote liberal.
And so let's take a look at the other market and the implication that has. And that would be, how many seats will the Conservatives win in Canada's next election? Similarly, the same tracker over at the CBC has projected 120 seats. That bracket starts at 109. 109 or fewer is 25 cents, and then 110 to 114, and it goes up from there. There's 10 brackets to choose from, and what does your research say?
Well, our research is betting on 119 right now, plus or minus a few seats as well. So I think that you could definitely place a bet there. That's the 14-cent bracket is 119, just on the verge of 120. So I think that would give the Conservatives actually the same seat count they have currently in the House of Commons. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to have exactly the same seats, but they'll have the same number. So yes, it's an interesting situation for them because, like I said, for some of the seats they could gain, maybe by moving to the center, they might lose some that are more where the right wing vote might be split. So at the end of the day, this is what a lot of people are saying. Is this parliament going to look that different from the parliament we have now? Why are we having this election at all? But yeah, you could definitely make a bet. I think the 115 to 119 bracket would be interesting, as well as the 120, because again, there's still 2 days to go. And this campaign's been very volatile. So small swings like that could happen.
Well, there's two brackets that we've just mentioned. Bracket 3, 115 to 119, 119 being your number, that's 24 cents, and 120 to 124, bracket number 4 at 15 cents. Take them both, 39 cents for $1 payout. Again, a very nice return. You could even add another bracket for a little bit more safety. So it appears as though for active traders on PredictIt, a tranche approach to securing 3 or 4 brackets, giving yourself a little bit of margin and a little bit of wiggle room, seems like you can still pull out at least an 80 to 100% return based on current numbers. So there seems to be a very good opportunity. The volume isn't bad in these markets. The how many seats will the Liberals win in Canada's next election has traded about 136,000 shares. So there's pretty good liquidity and something to take a look at. So we're noting in both your markets, you have
119 for the Conservatives and 148 for the Liberals.
So we've got your numbers, and we're going to turn. We'll come right back to the Prime Minister election after a quick break.
Want a little more luck in your life? Get Luckbox, the control freak's guide to life, money, and probability. Named Best New Magazine of 2019 and 2020. Luckbox is the must-read magazine of active investors, big thinkers, side hustlers, entrepreneurs, gamblers, data geeks, and risk takers. You can buy Luckbox on newsstands, but with this special offer, receive a 10-issue digital subscription absolutely free. Visit getluckbox.com/TPT to receive the award-winning Luckbox in your inbox. Don't rely on luck. Get Luckbox. Learn more at getluckbox.com/TPT.
And we're back with Tasha Kheiriddin. And now that we know the elections are happening, we wanted to bring you back because of your winning call last time out. You called the calling of the election accurate, even though all of Canada is wondering why we're even having these elections in the first place. But the more important question now in front of us is who's going to prevail. We turn to the big market on PredictIt, 202,000 shares traded as of today. Who will be the Prime Minister of Canada as a result of Monday's election? Currently, Trudeau is sitting at 90 cents and Erin O'Toole is sitting at 12 cents. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot to look at here. According to the Nanos survey published today, in fact, Justin Trudeau is now in a statistical dead heat with O'Toole, 32% for the Liberals and 31% support for the Conservatives. That poll is within that difference is within the poll's margin of error. Ipsos found that if the election were held today, the Liberals and Conservatives would also be tied at 32% of the vote. And again, Eric Grenet's poll tracker on CBC has the Liberals at 31.6% and the Conservatives at 31.3%, just a fraction of a point apart. What says your research?
Well, research at Navigator says that, according to our projections, the Conservatives have a 40% likelihood of winning, the Liberals 60%, but a Conservative majority is off the table. So let me explain, because our system is very different than the U.S. system. The fact that you've got parties that are so close in the popular vote doesn't mean that they will have similar numbers of seats. Kind of like the Electoral College. You have a situation where here you have to win by ridings or electoral districts, and each one is its own contest. So if your vote is really concentrated in certain parts of the country where there are fewer ridings or electoral districts, then you may have, 50% of that area perhaps, but there's only 25 seats to win. So in a parliament where you need 170 seats to get a majority, it's not going to help you a lot. So what we look at is how those percentages break down to seats in parliament, which give you either a majority or minority. So what we found is our model shows right now a 25% chance the Liberals get a majority government. That's not huge. 36% chance they win a minority, more likely. The Conservatives have a 39% chance to win a minority, but a 0% chance to get a majority. So when you add everything up, the likelihood that Justin Trudeau will be prime minister when this is all over, we say is about 60%. So you're right now, your market seems to bear that out.
60%, although the market's trading at 89%.
Yeah, it's a bit higher. Yes.
Yeah. So if you're looking from a value perspective, O'Toole is the value bet because he's sitting at 13 cents with what you underwrite as a 40% chance of prevailing. Why do you think the markets are so tilted in favor of Trudeau when the polls seem to be a little bit closer, or to indicate that the race is much closer between the Liberals and Conservatives?
I think it might be a holdover from the campaign itself, in the sense that people who were paying attention at the beginning, it was kind of a foregone conclusion. Oh, Trudeau's going to win. Nobody thought the Conservatives really had much of a chance. Things shifted noticeably 2 weeks into the campaign. So if you're paying attention, that's when O'Toole got interesting. In the last week, again, of a very short campaign, it's only a 5-week campaign. So you had 2 weeks of Liberals going up, then 2 weeks of the Conservatives going up, and now they're neck and neck. And you have to really, like I said, understand where the breakdowns happen in the country here to know how that translates into votes, into seats. But overall, the Liberals have it easier because their vote is really concentrated more in the eastern part of the country, in Ontario and Quebec and the Atlantic provinces, where there is the bulk of seats, especially Ontario and Quebec. So their percentage is worth more. So which is why Trudeau is still favored to win, even if just, not paying rapt attention to all this. A casual observer would say, well, in that situation, he's probably still going to eke out some kind of victory.
So the strong Conservative concentration in places like Alberta are not enough to overcome that then?
No, exactly.
Any indication what early voting means, or a high turnout in early voting favors?
Well, high turnout, it is a high turnout. I think it is an indication because of the pandemic too, that people were nervous about going to vote on election day, and they were given the option of mailing, which we hadn't had before. So some people may have just wanted to take advantage of that. I think it shows quite a bit of interest in this election. I think for an election that people thought would be about nothing, people are actually getting quite engaged. So, at the end of the day, it will matter who gets out to vote. That is a big issue because especially for some of the parties that traditionally, appeal to younger voters like the NDP, those voters tend not to go and actually vote. And in a pandemic, it might be even harder to get people to go on the day of. So the ground game is important. So again, that favors parties like the Liberals and the Conservatives. They're more established. They have more volunteers. They have more money. They have more ability to drag people out and get them to cast their ballot. Smaller parties don't necessarily have that infrastructure.
Well, your call for who will be Prime Minister of Canada on October 31st at 60% is Trudeau. You come into this podcast with us batting 1,000 from your prior call. Tasha, I know you're on a short leash. It's a busy day for you up in Canada. Thanks for coming back to explain this to us. We understand hockey pretty well, but we're still trying to get our arms around your election system. So thanks again, Tasha. We're going to be watching carefully and placing some trades.
Oh, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
And remember, listeners, you can follow Tasha's commentary on Twitter at Tasha Kheiriddin. At Tasha Kheiriddin. Kheiriddin is Kheiriddin. Also, her website, TashaKheiriddin.com. And take a look at her commentary going right up into the election on Monday. It was great having Tasha back. Mike, where do we go from here?
Well, Jeff, our next episode of The Prediction Trade is going to feature a meteorologist. I know you mentioned at the top of this episode that you had placed a trade on the market on Kalshi, predicting whether or not it would rain in New York. Not sure if it has or hasn't yet, but hopefully by next week we'll be able to learn a little bit more about what you need to know to get to to get an inside scoop on forecasting weather patterns, get a little bit of an edge in those weather markets that pop up every day on Kalshi. Also worth mentioning for listeners, if you are the type of person who's interested or invested in cryptocurrency, there's a brand new issue of Luckbox magazine that just dropped, and it's all about crypto. Really interesting stuff in that issue. I know we've got Charles Hoskinson, who, if the name isn't familiar to you, I'm sure Cardano is. Jeff, you want to talk a little bit more about Charles?
Sure. Charles is the co-founder of Ethereum, and also the co-founder of Cardano, which is a up-and-coming new altcoin that recently had a surge from the 140 to 240 price range just in a very short period of time within the last couple months. We have an exclusive and extensive interview with Charles talking about the next generation of cryptocurrencies and which ones will prevail. That was a great insight, being able to speak to him on his ranch over in Denver. We also have an interview with Anthony Scaramucci, whose firm Skybridge Capital just recently dropped a couple $100 million into the crypto markets back in December, right in front of a big price run up. So we're looking at the institutional side at cryptocurrency investing and the supply demand story there. I think Anthony makes a compelling case for cryptocurrencies in general. We excerpt his new book on that topic. And we must have about 9 or 10 other different experts weigh in the crypto space, including about 35 actionable trading recommendations from active traders and crypto traders, et cetera. So it's a great issue for those who know little about cryptocurrencies or those who are really actively investing in that market right now. That's free in digital format at getluckbox.com, the most recent issue of Luckbox, the issue with cryptocurrency. So pick it up now. And that's all we have for this episode of the Prediction Trade. If you like what you heard, tell your friends about us and make sure you subscribe to the show wherever you listen to your podcasts. And check out thepredictiontrade.com to sign up for our newsletter, find us on social media, or just to send us a message. And you can also find the Prediction Trade in print in each issue of Luckbox magazine. Remember, that's at getluckbox.com to read the latest issue of Luckbox digitally for free. So thank you again for joining us. This is Jeff Joseph.
And I'm Mike Reddy.
And remember, always wager responsibly, believe in math, master your trade, and join us next time on the Prediction Trade.